Lacey.
And I'm Sam.
Welcome to Monster Soup and Creature Brews, the podcast where we talk about all things monster movies, big, small, creepy, or downright ridiculous.
From movie monsters to cryptids lurking in the shadows of folklore, we're here to explore them all. So kick back, grab a snack,
or a drink,
and let's dive into some monster-filled mayhem.
Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to be talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. Mixing up my movie titles there for a minute. Sam's going to give us the official movie description.
Epic next chapter in the cinematic MonsterVerse pits two of the greatest icons in motion picture history against each other. The fearsome Godzilla and the mighty Kong, with humanity caught in the balance.
And so ChatGPT explains this movie badly as a giant monkey and a giant lizard punch each other for no reason, while humans drag them around, mess up their lives, and make everything worse. There's an ancient secret world with a glowing axe and a bunch of shady corporations creating robot monsters. Eventually, the monkey and the lizard stop fighting long enough to team up against the giant evil robot lizard, and the humans just kind of stand around and hope for the best. The end.
I mean, again, spot on. That was the longest one that's ever done. There's a lot going on in this movie, so I kind of see that.
Yeah, there's a lot that happened in this movie. You gonna do the honors?
Yeah, let's get this started. This is another
Let's
long
recap
one.
this bitch.
The movie starts on Skull Island as we go through Kong's morning routine. He takes a shower in a waterfall. He picks up a giant tree and clears it of all its branches like a little spear. And then we see a little girl that's playing with a Kong doll. The movie sound cuts out, alluding to the girl being deaf, which I'm pretty sure it is. Even the actress is actually a deaf actress. Mm-hmm. So, and she shows the doll to Kong, who nods, and then proceeds to launch the tree straight into the sky. And it hits what looks like a artificial containment field, and it starts to spark out, so it's like a fake sky. Then we get introduced to Dr. Andrews, who pulls up to the little girl in a Jeep. And Dr. Andrews is talking with one of her colleagues about potentially moving Kong to another containment field because clearly he doesn't like the fact that he knows he's in a containment field. And she quickly shuts the guy down, stating that as soon as they move Kong, Godzilla will find him and kill him because there can't be two alpha titans.
I have issues with this entire premise of the movie, I'm just gonna say, because Kong Island was an island surrounded by a hurricane. So even if Godzilla and him are gonna duke it out, wouldn't you want them to duke it out on the super
isolated, far away from everyone?
That no one else goes to because it's surrounded by a terrifying hurricane? I don't understand the whole point of moving him, period. Or even setting up a containment field. That was a lot of money.
I think it might be one of those things where they liked having one of the titans that they could study in a small area. I just don't know how successful they were at doing that.
Also, what happened to the skull crawlers? Are they just killing Where are the Eevees? Were they just eaten after they imprisoned Kong in these cities?
Well, they talk about it later in the movie that almost all of them died while Kong was fighting something or something. They mentioned, but I can't remember the details.
This movie could have been a lot shorter. They could have just let him and Godzilla manage it on Skull Island.
They really could have. We get the little girl's name, which is Gia, and she signs Dr. Andrews that Kong is mad, as we just clearly saw as he chucked his spear into the wall.
He harpooned a TV, yeah, he's pissed.
Then we get the opening credits, which were actually, at first I was just going to not write anything about them, but they're actually kind of interesting. There's a lot of Hollow Earth theory.
Yeah, Dr. Brooks.
They show a lot of scientists being discredited, news headlines. And then what I thought was cool is they do a lot of, they do these battle montages. So you see Godzilla and Kong fighting off their respective enemies or creatures they've had to kill. It was very, that scene in Incredibles where you see the supers getting killed and then the robot winning, then the soup winning, robot winning. It was very much like that until you get to the iconic Kong versus Godzilla splash screen. Yeah, I actually kind of like what they've done with all the opening scenes for all these movies. They're all really good. After that, we get introduced to what I'm just going to call the conspiracy theorists, recording a podcast about him getting ready to uncover all the secrets at Apex Cybernetics.
Yeah, our podcast homie.
Yeah.
He has more listeners than us, though.
Yeah. We follow our guy as he heads down into the Apex building where he talks to a random employee and just annoys the shit out of him until he gets up and goes to the bathroom. As soon as that guy gets up, though, he sits down at the computer that guy was working at, puts in a thumb drive and starts downloading all this information. And then not even 2 seconds after he did that, alarms start going off. And I mean, I'm with him. I would assume I got caught.
Can we talk about the commitment, though, to go work for a company that you hate and don't believe in to become one of their engineers?
Just to uncover all the information?
Just to find the one employee who can't stand you, that you know that you can talk, like, neck breathe, until they'll get up and leave their computer unlocked. And let's be real here. Sam's going to kill me for saying this. But, like, everybody in the building walks away from their work computers and doesn't lock them.
It takes 2 seconds to lock your computer.
But nobody does it.
But no one does.
I know. The IT guy knew flinching, but that's what happened.
Yeah. So the alarms start going off, and everyone starts evacuating. As he's leaving, he noticed a group running in a different direction than everyone else. They were going into a secure area, and so he decides to slip in right before the door closes all the way. It's at this point that we actually see, just as this guy is about to get caught, people are starting to question him, like, what are you doing back here? We see Godzilla pop up and start attacking the facility. Just before he gets caught, Godzilla plasma blasts just these people. Somehow this guy manages to dodge the plasma blast that's like 2 feet away from him.
But honestly, I feel like just the fact that there's pure pandemonium, you can make a good argument for me like, look, man, I don't know, I just turned left. I'm so lost. I'm so confused.
I'd be like, this isn't the right way to exit.
I thought the emergency exit was this way. I just followed y'all. That's what I would do.
Yeah. Anyways, these people get destroyed right in front of him. And in the area that got destroyed, you see like a giant pulsing red, like mechanical eye. And then it cuts to another scene.
I didn't realize that was an eye when I watched it, though.
It kind of looks like an eye. It looks very, if anyone's ever played Portal, it's very Gladys Aperture Theaters. So I was like, oh, that's definitely like a robot eye or like some sentient thing.
As someone who is not as well versed in video games, it didn't occur to me that it was an eye until later on in the movie.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, weird, creepy thing, cool.
It cuts over to Maddie, who is now in high school. And as she's leaving, we see her listening to the conspiracy theorist podcast of the guy that we just followed. And he's claiming he's found evidence of what Apex Cybernetics is doing.
Is his name Bernie?
It is. I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
It cuts over to... I keep putting Millie in here. It cuts over to Maddie, who's trying to convince her dad that Apex might really be hiding something and that Godzilla wouldn't just randomly attack somewhere. He's never done that before, so why would he, like, flip the script now? But her dad is convinced that Godzilla's an animal just like all the other animals, and sometimes animals change. And he might just decide that humans don't need to be here anymore. Which you would think, especially in the other movie, where he seemed to like be able to like identify a reason behind everything that Godzilla was doing. All of a sudden, he's clueless about why Godzilla would randomly attack a theater. I was like, because he feels threatened by something.
I think maybe he's just bitter because he's lost his son and his wife now, and he's raising a challenging teenage daughter. So maybe he was like, yeah, fuck Godzilla, kill that dude.
Yeah. Also trying to figure out where the fuck they're living.
At first I thought they were in Florida, but then I'm like, no, it doesn't specifically say they're in Florida.
It doesn't. I just rewatched it, and it doesn't say where they are, but I assumed they were still maybe in, like, Boston area, because that's where they were originally.
Well, Boston got leveled, though.
Yeah. Oh, fair, so they're probably living somewhere. I'm assuming they must live somewhere close to Florida, so whether that be Georgia, Alabama, because it's somewhere close to Pensacola, because that's where the Apex Cybernetics is.
Which is why I just assumed. Also, they looked hot and sweaty, and as two people who are from Florida, we can assure you that you are hot and sweaty when you're there. Yeah. Not the fun kind of hot either. Just like the miserable, gonna die kind of hot.
Depressing hot. She tries to convince her dad, but her dad's like, no, Godzilla's evil, blah, blah, blah. We, again, see Maddie listening to the same podcast. And this is where we get the name of Bernie, who's doing the podcast. And the podcast is called Titan Truth Podcasts. And then we switch scenes to the head of Apex and his assistant, who's also named Sarazawa, interestingly enough.
I always assume they're maybe related. Like, maybe that's his son or cousin or something.
I'm trying to remember if they ever mention whether or not he has, like, siblings or relatives, but I don't think they ever do. Anyways, they're tracking down a Dr. Lind, who is one of many scientists who are discredited for their Hollow Earth theories, which after Godzilla, you would think that people would be, like...
A little more open to that?
Yeah, they're like, if these giant creatures are on this planet, why couldn't the Earth be a little hollow? You know what I mean?
What I would love to see, and they don't talk about in any of these movies, would be the religious backlash from all of this happening.
Well, there's probably a lot of doomers out there who are like, it's the rapture, this is the end of the world.
And we didn't talk about it when we did our Hollow Earth MonsterVerse moment, but the Flat Earth Society going up against the Hollow Earth Society
a slugfest.
Would be an internet battle that I think I'd pay to see. I think that would be amazing. So I would love to see some of the other societal fallouts that these creatures would have caused.
Yeah, I would love to, like, just be a fly on the wall in that universe and just see how all the people are reacting.
Because the Doomsday Preppers in particular.
Oh yeah, there's people in bunkers. Even though that, depending on where you're at, that might not be great because, yeah, some of them are underground and they just destroy shit down there. Anyways, they track down Dr. Lin because Dr. Lin wrote a book and was also one of the many scientists who got discredited for his hollow Earth. They show Dr. Lin like a 3D image of Earth and all these tunnels showing that there is a path down there. And they try to convince Lin to assist them with going to hollow Earth to harness a new energy source to maybe combat the Titans. Lin is skeptical because he's already attempted to enter hollow Earth. And in that attempt, his brother passed away. Lin talks about how there's a gravitational inversion, which crushed the vessel that they were traveling in. Apex claims they've created a new vehicle that can survive the inversion. And he shares a theory. Oh, this is where Lin shares a theory with them that if they just go down there, they could easily get lost because there's millions of tunnels down there. He thinks that Titans have like this like primordial memory where if one of them leads them down the tunnels, they might be able to lead them into this like core area of hollow Earth.
Well, and some of this, not that this movie ever like delves into it, but if you've watched the TV show Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, that timeline kind of goes in like right around Skull Island, like the 70s, and then after the 2014 Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
So before King of Monsters, and talks about a lot of this. We're not planning to cover that particular series, at least at this point. But yeah, they do a lot of the study on Hollow Earth, and they talk about a lot in that TV show.
Ah, gotcha. It cuts back to Andrews, Gia, and we actually see Lin there trying to attempt to convince Andrews to have Kong lead them to enter Hollow Earth. Andrews is opposed to this, citing that their intervention has already damaged Kong's natural habitat. And Andrews is also not convinced Kong would even bother leading them. Like, what's to make him do that? Lin points out that Andrews always thought that Skull Island was like a hollow Earth brought to the surface. And Lin states that he thought the entrance in Antarctica that could maybe find Kong a new home and save theirs because it'll be one less Titan. He says that it could be the only way to stop Godzilla using the power source in hollow Earth. And Andrews eventually caves, and in the very next scene, we see how they decided to get Kong off the island.
Which is, I don't know whose brilliant idea that is, but the dumbest idea.
Oh, yeah, this was a terrible idea.
Easily in this movie. You know what? Not the dumbest idea in this movie, but still ranks in the top 3.
So they don't talk about this, but you can kind of figure it out. But essentially, they drugged Kong, like sedated him, put him on a bunch of naval ships, and just chained him to the ship.
Which just seems like a recipe for everyone involved to drown and die a horrible Titanic-themed death.
This movie, I can't really judge because I haven't really paid too much attention. I'm sure King of Monsters had a higher death count because all the Titans were out there rampaging. But this was pretty bad. There's a lot of people.
All these movies have terrible death counts. It's just, for quite a few of them, the only one that really worked at making you care about the characters was
Kong Skull Island. But that probably had the smallest amount of people.
Yeah. Whereas, like, all the other Godzilla movies, it's been mass chaos and murder, and you just didn't care because they're faceless.
Yeah, they're beans.
They're
just people in the background. Anyways, they cut to a bunch of the naval ships with a sleeping Kong strapped to a ship.
I would not get on that ship.
Yeah. And he appears to be waking up from his sedation. And here we meet the president of Apex, Mia. She introduces herself to Lin, and Lin briefly goes over their plan once they get to Antarctica. And they cut to Gia, who wakes up and walks out to Kong in the rain. And I actually really love the cinematography they do with Gia, because every time Gia's like the front and center of the movie, they cut out all the sound to try to mimic what she's going through.
Well, they also make it a point that you notice that Gia is more sensitive to the vibrations that are emitted from the Mutos.
Yeah, the Titans. And on top of that, she can also detect when another Titan's heartbeat starts to get in the vicinity. So Gia wakes up and she walks out to Kong in the rain, and we hear loud heartbeats in the silence. Kong is trying to break free from his bonds when Gia looks up to him and points a finger, and they do like a little Mighty Joe Young finger touch, which is like cute. And then Andrews runs out to Gia and starts signing to figure out what's going on. She signs to Andrews that Kong is sad, and Kong signs back home. And then we get back to Maddie, who's still listening to Bernie's podcast. And he says he's discovered unauthorized tech that doesn't match any of the engineering spec that he's ever seen. And seeing as he's in the engineering department, this is like valid.
He had commitment, Bernie did.
Yeah. A junkie van pulls up across the street and from Maddie's house, and she heads down and takes the keys from her friend Josh and says, "Get in, we're going on an adventure."
Get in, loser, we're going shopping.
Yeah, and they magically find themselves in Pensacola. And I put a note in here that, like, I don't know where they are, so I don't know how long it takes to drive. Like, how long was Maddie missing? Because when they cut to her dad in later scenes, he's like, "Come on, Maddie, pick up. Come on, man." I'm like, you should have reported your daughter missing a long time ago. Like, are you just now discovering?
She's a teenage girl, and first of all, she got into a creeper van, so there's some concern there.
Facts.
I have a feeling that Maddie might be, like, wildly unsupervised.
The fact that she's so deep in the, like, conspiracy theorist Kool-Aid is a little concerning. Yeah.
But, no, it's interesting because the way Florida is shaped, depending on where you're at in the state, it can take 10 hours to get to Pensacola or just 2. It really depends.
It doesn't really say where she is, so she could literally be in any of those upper states or actually in a different part of Florida.
I don't know, though. If I was her dad and I had watched my hometown be leveled and all that destruction, I would live nowhere near a coastline.
No, me either. And I would also put tracking devices on my child, because this isn't the first time she's wandered off somewhere. Like, remember when she left the facility in
She's
King
a
of
teenage
Monsters?
girl. She has a cell phone. Let's put a Find My app in that.
Facts.
This movie, 2024, there was Find My apps in it.
Yeah, this isn't like the Seventh Heaven, the Camdens, all their issues could have been solved by cell phones.
Okay, so Sam and I don't remember what we were doing, but for whatever reason, we had rewatched a couple of the Seventh Heaven series, and every single plot line could have been solved with A, little common sense, and B, a cell phone.
Yep. Facts. Cell phones would have, like, all of their issues are usually because they want to ask their parents, like, should I do this or should I not? And a quick text would have fixed this.
They were desperately trying to find, where's Lucy? Where's Lucy?
I need an adult. Or something like that.
Just a cell phone would have solved a lot of those plot lines.
Side tangent over. They somehow drive from wherever they are to Pensacola. They track him down somehow by tracing the bleach. So they go to some random store or market and they ask the guy, "Hey, we're looking for a guy that buys bleach." And this was actually, I put a side note here because this shit was funny. It's a big throwback to the idiots that used to do the Tide Pod challenge. Okay. He's like, "God, this isn't like another one of those challenges because when I saw those kids Tide Pods, I didn't know they were going to eat them."
Which, isn't it? It's sad that that's a thing that we ever had to say.
Yeah, God. I feel when he said that shit,
I died laughing when I was like, "Oh, man,
that was an era."
Well, now, and they've made, because of that, Tide Pods are really hard to fucking open now. They come with that, like, double lock thing.
Yeah.
It's like the idiots who are licking ice cream, and I'm like, fuck, now the ice cream is quadruple sealed.
Yeah.
Making our life
and
harder,
more expensive. Because people are fucking dumb. Anyways, it takes him 2 seconds to clock that they're looking for Bernie. And he even offers to give them his address if they buy a fish. And then it cuts to them knocking on a random door. He refuses to open, trying to pretend to be someone else. But then Maddie name drops her parents. And then he comes out and he's like, "Are you Madison Russell?" Like, he knows exactly who she is.
Well, if he's deep in the sauce, he would.
Yeah, I'm sure he's like knows everything there is to know about Monarch. So, and then they have a really awkward, paranoid conversation about tap water, which ends with them deciding to infiltrate Apex again to get more evidence.
You know what? When you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a conspiracy theorist all the way.
Dude, the level of synchronization that him and Maddie were in is a little concerning because he's a grown ass man and she's a teenager.
Yeah,
I have full faith that they would never have done anything, but I would hope my children...
As a parent, sometimes
I'm very concerned.
Sometimes pre-parenthood, I would have been like, oh, whatever, and gone along with the story. Now, post-parenthood...
I wouldn't have even questioned it.
Post-parenthood, I'm like, oh, God, I hope that's never our daughter or son just rolling along with some conspiracy theorists they don't really know and just listen to over the internet.
Like, you want to join a cult? Because that's how you join a cult.
Yeah, no, it hits differently.
Not to be like those people, but... Anyways,
we are those people.
Yeah, we are. Back on the boat with Kong, Andrews confronts Cheetah about not letting her know that she could communicate with Kong, because Kong signs in the previous scene, and she's like, "Oh my God, you can talk to Kong?" She says Kong didn't want her to know, which is also interesting.
Which, though, in Kong's defense, right?
Oh, facts. No, facts. I wouldn't want them to know that I can communicate. I want to be able to watch them or talk to them and know what they're saying, but them not knowing what I'm thinking.
Right, like, it's one thing to make the exception for the sweet, innocent little girl.
They mentioned this later, but he's kind of like her protector. Andrews talks with Lind about Gia's family dying on the island, and how she vowed to take care of Gia, and that Kong may have done the same thing. This is what I was talking about. How Kong might have seen himself as a guardian.
Once again, though, the parental choices in this movie series are interesting.
Oh yeah, I would not allow my child on this boat with a giant gorilla.
With the 2014 Godzilla, where they put that kid on a bus and we're like, he'll be fine.
Right? This friend from work will take care of him.
It's fine, don't worry about it. You know, to conning your daughter to participate in mass genocide when they release all the other Titans. You know, to not being concerned where your kid's at for many hours in her creeper van with her friends. To taking a child on a naval ship where you strapped a giant ape who I personally would wake up panicked if I had been tied to a ship, let alone if I was an ape who didn't fully understand. This is a we're all gonna drown scenario.
All very disconcerting.
All the parental choices through this movie, maybe not ideal.
Lynn wants to know if Gia could possibly keep Kong in check or listen to her orders. And Andrews is like, 1, she's a child, and 2, no one can control Kong. Gia puts her hand on the wall, and they do that little effect thing again, and in the silence, she essentially can hear, they make the sound effect of when Godzilla is charging up his plasma and his back's lining up.
Yeah, so she can feel the vibration.
She can hear that sound. That sound starts playing in the silence, and she immediately, like, bolts out of the room and tries to find Andrews, but before she can even get there, the alarms start going off. Kong breaks out of his shackles, and the military start firing missiles at Godzilla. Godzilla makes quick work of all the fighter jets that are around with his tail. And then, round 1 of Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla flips the boat that Kong is on. More missiles get fired, and right before Kong is about to get attacked, they manage to release him out of his,
shackles.
I was going to say bonds. Yeah,
his chains, his shackles. He's strung up like a Thanksgiving turkey.
Yeah, he's literally like trying to escape while he's underwater. I can't remember. I think it's actually Len who manages to get there. Which, I gotta tell you, every time I watch these movies, it's never the like military people who open doors or release, like in the scene in King of Monsters where they have the helicopter that's trying to get in. It's Russell who opens the door or drops the helicopter on the door to open it up so another helicopter can get in. And this one, it's Len who opens or releases the shackles for Kong. It's like, no one in this military ship could fucking do that. Why does it always have to be this guy? That's a common theme in these movies. Is that
more interesting when it's the guy?
But like, how do they even know what the right button is? You know what I mean?
They wouldn't. In real life, everybody would have drowned horribly.
Yeah,
it'd have been a very tragic news story.
Anyways, he manages to release Kong. Kong manages to flip the boat back over. And Godzilla, who clearly has the home field advantage here, starts circling Kong like a shark. Kong, in order to get like a better like vantage point, starts jumping from ship to ship to get to a better position. Godzilla hops onto the ship that he manages to land on and they just start scrapping on the ship. They box for a bit until Kong knocks Godzilla back into the water, which probably in hindsight wasn't the best move. Because Godzilla almost catches him off guard. He just caught lacking hard. Because like Godzilla, I'm assuming hears the charging up, but Godzilla plasma blasts through the ship, and Kong manages to jump right before he gets hit. And once he's in the water, though, Godzilla starts dragging him deeper into the water. And Andrews, again, how is no one else thinking of ideas? Andrews is like, we need to do something to disorient Godzilla. Drop depth charges. Like, why is it this one scientist out of all these people on this ship that comes up with an idea?
Maybe everybody else is trying not to drown.
Maybe. Andrew tells them to drop depth charges to disorient Godzilla, and it works. Kong manages to get back to the surface, but he's pretty winded at this point, and he's just lying on his back. And Lin, again, the two random scientists comes up with the idea to cut the engines and make it seem as if, Kong lost, and to see if Godzilla would give up. Godzilla mean mugs, and then heads back into the water and leaves. But they're not sure what to do now, because if they start the ship back up, Godzilla would just come back and attack them again.
See, this is where Godzilla failed. You always, what is it? Rule number 2,
double tap. Yeah. Len comes up with the idea to airlift Kong to Antarctica. Cuts back over to Maddie, Josh, and Bernie, who are sneaking back in through the wreckage of the old Apex building. And they get to the part where Bernie saw the giant eye, but it's missing. Maddie finds a random elevator that has no security access whatsoever, and they go down to the sublevels of the base. You would think they would put some kind of security measures if you're going to go to some like underground facility, but no. They just hit the button, go down to the bottom floor. It's like sub-level 33. They snoop around until they hear people coming, and they sneak into what they think is a random room. And in that room, they discover a bunch of the skullcrawler eggs. And then that room gets like craned onto some type of like...
Looks like a bullet train almost.
Yeah, like I'd say it's like a gravity transportation. So like the actual pod gets like sit through some kind of underground tunnel.
But once again, and I will die on this fact, nobody is as concerned about the sticky egg pods as they should be. They're just like, oh look, skullcrawlers.
Well, they've probably been doing this for a while if they've been testing out the like...
Which is why they should be concerned about the skullcrawlers. We saw them bitches.
Yeah. While they're on that little gravity train thing, it says the destination is Hong Kong, China. Back with Kong, we see him being airlifted by a bunch of helicopters and steel ropes. And they drop him off at the old Monarch base where Ghidorah was. There's a giant tunnel that leads down into Hollow Earth.
Sims holes.
Yeah. They get Gia to sign to Kong that home is in that direction. Kong doesn't really seem to care about that. And they get Gia to sign that his family is down the tunnel. And even though they're not 100% sure that there is other creatures down there, Gia agrees nonetheless and signs to Kong that family is down the tunnel. Kong starts going down the tunnel, and they get in their little hovercrafts and start following him. Lynn mentions that they're about to get spit out at 1,000 miles away and get inverted into free fall, and then promptly throws back a little throw-up bag for Maya in the back. So they get shot through this like wormhole-looking thing, and he was right. They get dropped into like free fall. Kong manages to clutch onto like the side of a mountain to slow him down. They just get lucky and their engines manage to turn back on right before they crash into anything. They get spit out into what looks like a giant jungle. You see a bunch of creatures. It essentially looks like Skull Island. Like they have a bunch of those like bat creature things that are flying around. There's a bunch of different animals on the ground. You see animals eating other animals. Tons of creatures are just roaming around. As well as like throughout speckled through the land are these like purple like electric rocks looking things.
They're like stalagmites and stalactites. They look like cave formations almost.
Yeah, but they're all glowing. One of the three hovercrafts, though, gets destroyed by one of those flying snake creatures. Kong stops the creature, but then another one wraps him up, and he's almost dead, but they manage to, like, the other two ships start shooting at the creature, and then Kong manages to kill it. And then they just follow Kong. Kong's just, like, out there just doing ape things. And he starts... he does. He's
just living his best ape life.
Yeah, he's just doing stuff. And eventually he starts heading towards this, like, upside-down mountain that's in the distance. Eventually he stops at the edge of, like, a giant cliff and, like, jumps and starts floating into the sky. And it does very similar to what they did when they popped out, is that the land, like, he inverts onto the mountain. So, like, he starts floating into the air, and then gravity starts to kick in, and he falls onto the upside-down mountain. And then it cuts back to Maddie and gang, who their little gravity train is about to stop. I'm also concerned that there's no one, like, inspecting these things when they're coming back and forth.
Full of Jim Bro version of Titans.
Yeah.
Skullcrawler sticky eggs, and nobody's like, maybe we should put, like, a video feed in this. We have the technology, right?
Yep.
Like, there's
That's
not...
why I think it's crazy that there's no kind of surveillance on these things at all.
Like no, there's just three random people just chilling there with eggs nonchalantly.
They get out and start looking around the area. They're in this, like, giant dome area, and they find a bunch of, like, broken skullcrawler eggs. And alarms start going off, the lights start turning on, and then the center platform starts raising up, and we see a giant mecha Godzilla raising out of the floor, and lo and behold, its eyes are red, just like the giant red orb that Bernie saw the previous night.
Do you know what this scene kind of reminded me of a little bit?
Gundam?
No. The Star Wars scene where Luke fights, gosh, I don't know, that thing where Jabba the Hutt drops him into the floor.
Oh, when they drop him into the pit to have him, like, fight? I forgot the rank Thor. I can't remember what it's called.
I don't remember what it's called either, but it just, I don't know why, because obviously different worlds, different creatures, but it reminded me a little bit of that same moment.
Yeah, it has that like pit fighting vibe. Yeah. The Mecha Godzilla rises out of the floor, and we see a man, this is the other Serizawa, being strapped into what looks like a VR headset. It's very sort of online. He connects with Mecha Godzilla and starts.
You and I are such dorks.
What? I can't
Thus
help
far,
it.
we've mentioned Star Wars, Zombieland, Sword Art Online.
It's just who we are. He connects with the Mecha Godzilla and then starts controlling it. A skull crawler gets released into the area, and Mecha Godzilla makes quick work of it with its plasma breath. Right after he kills it, though, the Mecha Godzilla powers down involuntarily. And this is the real reason that they need this power source from Hollow Earth. It's to power Mecha Godzilla. The eye of Mecha Godzilla, I'm assuming it's the same one that he saw in that other facility, is like pulsing. And I think it's what's sending the signal to Godzilla, because not long after the Mecha Godzilla powers down, it cuts to Godzilla popping out of the water. Oh no, they cut to a scene where Godzilla is like traveling in a random direction, and then it just stops and then immediately abruptly changes into another direction. I think they're trying to like show that like whenever the Mecha Godzilla comes on, Godzilla can hear it or get a frequency signal.
I would think that the plasma breath that it's doing probably is a strong
Well, it's like when you
vibration or whatever you would think of it as.
I think they're trying to allude to that it's the eyes that are doing it though, because like they like zoom in on the eyes and it's like pulsing. It kind of sounds like the bioacoustics from the King of Hydra.
Okay, maybe. Maybe it's all of it.
Well, I think it might be a matter of when things get over a certain threshold of power, they can hear that. And that's how it like sends out a signal.
Maybe
but,
all the skull crawlers are screaming because they keep being
also
melted.
possible that the skull crawlers are what's causing the problem. I didn't think about that.
Because they're being melted in bread.
Yeah, but...
Which, where's PETA on this one?
Yeah, right? I'm sure there's a lot of crazies out there that are advocating for leave the Titans alone. They're just natures, whatever.
No, I'm here for leave the Titans alone, but also, like, let's not do what they're doing with them.
Yeah. Anyways, we see Godzilla do like a 180 and starts heading towards Hong Kong. And back with Kong, we see him in this giant mountain that's pulsing with like purple power. There's a giant door that's closing off the mountain. And Kong notices giant handprints on it. And he just pushes the doors open. He places his hand on like the same spots and pushes the door open. And we see a giant throne that's just surrounded by like these purple pillars of power. Kong heads down towards the throne and spots like a little axe on the ground that's made out of like a giant bone and what looks like the spine spike of Godzilla.
Yeah, it looks like one of his like Stegosaurus type plates. He glows. It's pretty.
All the people land their hovercrafts and start walking around the area while Kong takes a seat on the throne. It cuts back to Maddie and crew that are wandering the halls of Apex. Like, again, how is there no like security cameras or anything?
Because I could understand, like, maybe this is your top secret government facility. You didn't anticipate people sneaking their way into your, like, gravity train. But you would think at bare minimum you'd have a video feed.
Yeah, of, like, the hallways or something.
I would.
But yeah, they're, like, wandering these halls in the, like, China division. And they somehow, without getting caught, discover a giant skull of Ghidorah that has like a bunch of wires coming out of it, and they're all going towards that VR headset that's in the other room. Birdie theorizes that they were using Ghidorah's psychic link that it used to speak with its other heads to control Mechagodzilla using a psionic link.
Which I gotta tell you, I wasn't anticipating this cameo based on like the cutscene that the Ghidorah head was in.
I'm really curious what happened to the other guy. I wonder if they wanted to use him in this movie and he just didn't want to participate.
Well, I was sort of thinking that they were gonna like try to like genetically like clone Ghidorah and bring him back.
That's what I was thinking they were
I
gonna do.
wasn't picturing like taking his skull and putting wires into it to create a psychic link.
I thought they were gonna do like a Mecha Ghidorah, so I didn't think they were gonna do Mecha Godzilla. I thought they were gonna do a Mecha Ghidorah.
Yeah, like I didn't anticipate it taking this turn. I suppose,
because if I'm not crazy, I do know there's a Mecha Godzilla in like the really old school Sunrise movies, but I also thought there was a Mecha Ghidorah, so I thought that's the angle they were gonna go with. But
see, I thought they were gonna go with like the cloning angle and try to like create a baby one.
Oh, try to recreate it.
Yeah, like an I Am Groot scenario. We're nerds.
Yeah, a little bit. Right after they find that skull, it cuts back to Godzilla, who's pulling up on Hong Kong. and immediately starts heading towards the Apex building. Right when Godzilla is about to start attacking the Apex building, Godzilla starts charging up. Oh, when Godzilla starts charging up, down below in Hollow Earth, the axe that Kong has starts glowing. When it starts glowing, Godzilla seems to notice that there's something below that's going on. So instead of shooting its plasma beam at Apex, which probably would have saved the whole movie because he would have just destroyed the Mechagodzilla before it could do anything, he actually shoots it down into Hollow Earth.
Which argues they must have had 2 Mechagodzillas because it seems like he did a pretty thorough job of destroying it in Pensacola.
I'm curious about that too. Were they able to just move it using that little gravity thing?
I wouldn't think so. I think
it looks really big, so
I
don't. I'm also wondering if they were maybe trying to confuse Godzilla by sending out a signal.
Maybe they were testing it or something.
At the same time.
But, like, the eye would indicate that he, like, 97% destroyed the original Mechagodzilla. Maybe this was, like, backup Mecha.
Maybe. Or maybe they were spare parts. So, like, they had multiple. Or it only took damage. It didn't actually get destroyed. So they just carried all the spare parts over to Hong Kong.
Potentially. But he's a pretty intricate looking build. Not an engineer, not a robotics professor, but he looks pretty complicated. I would guess that either he wasn't originally destroyed or they had a Plan B version. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to say because they don't give you enough information.
No, but, side tangent anyways.
When Godzilla starts charging up, down below the axe that Kong picks up starts glowing as well. And there's like a spot that has a cutout for the axe, and Kong places it into that spot, and the whole area underground starts glowing with the charged energy, and there's kind of like a picture of Godzilla that's glowing. Godzilla seemed to sense the power that was glowing or going on. He senses the power up that's going on underground, so he charges his plasma breath and shoots it down into the earth. Down below, the Apex agents start extracting a sample from the power of Hollow Earth, and this part makes absolutely no sense. They somehow, using that scan of a sample, all of a sudden are able to, like, replicate and have unlimited power up in the Apex headquarters.
Which doesn't make sense because all you would be replicating would be the, like, vibrations or the pattern of the power source. You wouldn't actually be replicating the power source itself.
It would make more sense if they had, like, an unstable power source and they were just looking for the formula to make it stable. Right. But that doesn't seem to be the case in this situation. They're making it seem like they're able to somehow, like, tap into the Earth's power and get that energy.
Or if, like, they had used a really sophisticated version of an extension cord, perhaps that would have made more sense. But no, I was confused about that part as well. Also about the sanity of the man who's like, great, we've scanned this new power source. Let me strap my head in to this monster's psychic vibrations and call it good.
Well, what's even scary to me is that, because they bring that up, Serizawa's like, oh, we have this new power source, and I can't remember the guy's name. I'll get to it eventually. But the guy that's the head of Apex is like, go ahead, start up Mechagodzilla. And Serizawa's like,
maybe we should test this a little bit.
Yeah, this is a new power source. We don't know how it's going to interact with the Mechagodzilla. We should test it out. And he's like,
I prefer not to melt my brain.
He said, get your fucking head in that fucking headset and work my Godzilla. That's essentially what happened.
Questionable decisions are made because, I like my brain in a non-liquefied state.
Fact. I've watched too much anime where people get stuck in a virtual reality to not have some scruples about what's going on.
Just seems like, maybe you should, you should have a red shirt, because we're just going to go with movie themes here. You should have a red shirt that you strap in first to see what happens to his brain before you commit your brain to it.
I don't think they put any, like, fail-safes in this Mechagodzilla. We'll get to that.
No, they're definitely putting all their eggs in this one crazy basket.
Yeah. Down below, Andrew speaks up about not stripping the power. As soon as she speaks up about trying to convince them not to strip the power, they all pull out their guns and target Lynn, Andrews, and Gia. And obviously, Kong doesn't take very kindly to that. But before they can do anything, a giant earthquake happens and wakes up all these, like, bat vulture creatures off the ceiling. And they start picking off all the people down below. After getting the sample, Maya tells her crew to bail. And just as the creatures are about to attack Andrews and Gia, the plasma beam from Godzilla cuts straight through them. Godzilla has, like,
he's great timing.
Immaculate timing and precision aim. He never hurts the protagonist. The beam comes through and saves Lynn, Andrews, and Gia. As Maya's trying to escape, she, for some godforsaken reason, shoots Kong, because Kong's not even looking at her. And then she shoots Kong as she's about to head out. And Kong just grabs her ship and just crushes it.
What I like, though, is that he takes the time to look into the ship.
Oh, yeah. He makes sure Gia's not in there, just double checking.
Right, he's making sure his homie isn't in that ship before he's like, fuck these bitches.
Yeah. Lynn, Andrews, and Gia get into the last remaining hover ship, and somehow Lynn can magically drive this ship, by the way, which is also weird. Kong grabs the axe.
You don't need training to do that, Samuel.
Right? He's played a lot of Microsoft Flight Simulator, okay?
Elite Dangerous. He's got heart. That's all it takes.
Yeah, he's been playing Star Citizen. Kong grabs the axe and heads up the hole that Godzilla created. Lynn and crew follow Kong in the hover ship. Maddie, Josh, and Birdie find their way into one of the command rooms that was analyzing the power source for the Hollow Earth. But they're quickly discovered by the staff because there's these giant fucking see-through glass windows. This part was funny too. He's like, the lady with the evil hairdo is calling the guards. And then they get held.
She does, though, just for the record. She does have a very classic villain-esque
she has
situation.
Yeah, she has a pantsuit, the pointy glasses, and then the secretary hairstyle.
She's got a French twist, a very sleek French twist happening.
It's an evil hairdo.
And it was a bit of comedic relief because he wasn't wrong. That was a classic evil lady look.
Yep. And then after she calls the guards, they get held at gunpoint, and Kong, they cut back to Kong, who manages to surface at this point, and then Kong and Godzilla lock eyes, and then round 2 starts. But this time, Kong isn't stuck in the water.
He's got an axe.
Yeah.
He powered up.
They just gave him all the upgrades. So Godzilla keeps trying to shoot plasma breath, and Kong is just standing on business with the interrupts. He shoves his axe down Godzilla's throat. The fight is actually pretty brutal.
We watch Hong Kong get leveled instead of Boston.
Yeah, Godzilla's just constantly trying to hit him with the plasma breath. And Kong's just blocking it with his axe. He's bobbing and weaving. One of the times, though, his axe gets knocked out of his hand. And he has to just, use the city as, a shield. And just keeps dodging between buildings. Yeah, Hong Kong's getting fucked up in this scene, by the way.
You know what's funny is that we've watched San Francisco be obliterated, Hawaii,
Vegas.
Nevada.
Yeah.
We've watched Boston get tanked.
Leveled.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now Hong Kong. New York's making out good in this series, and normally New York's the first to go.
Listen, New York's still recovering from the old Godzilla attack from 1998.
That was not technically part of this verse, but that one holds a special place on my heart.
It was the first one I ever watched.
I love Iguana Godzilla. It makes no sense, but Dr. Tatopoulos is my homie.
Yeah. Lynn and crew finally make it out of the hole as well, and they almost get wiped out because Kong and Godzilla are scrapping right around them. We see Kong manage to retrieve his axe and then close the distance with Godzilla. And then Kong goes in for a finishing move, and the plasma breath collides with the axe, and it causes a giant explosion or concussion, knocking both of them away. Kong loses his axe, but then he starts getting on the sneaky. He finds a giant construction crane, hides on a skyscraper, and then uses the crane to get Godzilla's attention in another direction, and then comes in with the flying clothesline, and then he gets Godzilla in a headlock, and then Godzilla does this judo shoulder throw. This is literally the best choreographed giant monster I've ever seen. So
it helps when you have opposable thumbs.
Yeah. Godzilla comes with the flying clothesline. He gets Godzilla in a headlock. Godzilla gives him the shoulder throw and right into a curb stomp. And then he does this ring around the rosy thing. And then he just starts bodying Kong. He headbutts him. He gives him a tail whip. And then he hits him with the fury swipes on his chest. And then he just stomps on his chest. And then he does the stare down. They both roar each other a little bit. But Kong is clearly down and out of this scene. And then Godzilla doesn't even feel like finishing him off. And then, I'm not even kidding. Godzilla's just you're not even worth my time. And starts walking away. Then it cuts back to Maddie, Josh, and Bernie, who are they get brought before the head of Apex, who's Walter Simmons, this dude starts monologuing so hard. He gives them the, I'm doing what's best for humanity speech.
And since we mentioned The Incredibles previously, I'm going to mention it here. You should never monologue.
Ever since I've watched that movie, I love catching villains doing the monologue.
You gotta be monologuing.
Especially when they pay for it. Yeah. I love when people are self-aware enough that they catch themselves. Syndrome knew. So he figures it out. But Walter starts monologuing, right, about how he's doing what's best for humanity speech as they're like powering up Mechagodzilla. But once Godzilla starts getting charged with this new power source, the alarms start going off, alerts about the system being unstable start ringing. Mechagodzilla starts moving on his own without the pilot controlling it, and the pilot gets like zapped and like he's trying to like take control, but he can't. And he's like, something's going wrong. So Mechagodzilla starts like moving on its own. And guess what the first thing it does? It gives him a little quick swipe and just the guy's like, oh fuck. Just dies. Godzilla like swipes him out of the air and just kills him. And then he kills the pilot right after that with plasma breath, which just completely scraps the like Apex facility.
Once again, this is why you should have used a red shirt first.
Yep. And then within like moments, he starts wreaking havoc through Hong Kong. And then Mechagodzilla, by the way, Mechagodzilla is like armed to the teeth with technology on top of already having all of Godzilla's things. So Godzilla is like ready to scrap and starts charging at Mechagodzilla. And Mechagodzilla starts firing missiles, got this little jet punch going on. And instead of letting Marek know what's going on, Maddie's friend Josh decides he can figure out the password and then hack the Apex systems and turn off the satellite.
This is one of my favorite scenes in this movie because it actually accurately reflects that you would in no way be able to do this. And then I think it's Bernie, our homie, who steps in and is like, can we just pour coffee in it?
Oh, no. I'll get to that, but yeah.
Because, like, you're not going to guess this password.
No, he's like, oh yeah, I can hack this.
You're much better off just starting to unplug shit.
Yeah, thank you.
When in doubt, as someone who's not technology oriented, when in doubt, unplug it all.
Yeah. That's actually a smart way to do things. Like, people, I love in scenes where people are being hacked. They're like, they're hacking the mainframe. We have to stop them. And you see two people typing on one keyboard trying to, like, counteract what a hacker's doing. And it's like, they can only hack you because you're on the internet.
Just unplug it.
If you unplug it or disconnect the Ethernet cord, they don't have access to anything.
And honestly, if you really want to go wild with it, just start ripping out wires.
Yeah,
Trust me, it will do enough damage to stop what's happening.
Just unplug the power. If it's powered off, it can't do anything.
Nope.
And it's not like they can remotely activate a power source.
I just love that this scene is in there.
Yeah. Andrew's group finally lands, and they land right next to Kong while Mechagodzilla is handling the real Godzilla. Gia starts touching the ground. She's like, I can feel his heartbeat, and she says it's weakening. They come up with this idea to like explode one of their hovercrafts onto Kong's heart to like jumpstart it, a la Godzilla nuke from King of Monsters, where they're like, oh, this will bring him back to life.
Like a la AED.
Yeah.
They basically use the ship as an AED to like electrically zap his heart to put it back into a regular rhythm. Yep.
So Lin flies the hovercraft onto Kong's chest and then self-destructs the hovercraft. And lo and behold, Kong wakes up. Gia signals to Kong to help Godzilla, and that Godzilla, needs him, whatever. And then they go back with... Dude, Mechagodzilla is bodying Godzilla. Like, Godzilla cannot not handle it.
Okay, well, nobody anticipates your opponent having missiles in their forearms.
Or, like, spinning tails of death. He has, like, a drill built onto his tail. They literally gave him all of the, like, Green Power Rangers Dragon Zord abilities.
See, I'm thinking they like, went to one of those robot competitions and
studied... yeah. Right? Like, the what are the robot battles competitions? Yeah.
They studied those and were like, oh, you know what would be cool?
Right?
Let's give him a rotating saw on his back.
Facts. So Gia signals Kong. Kong is like, alright, I'll help the old boy out. So Kong comes flying in and manages to stop the death blow. So Godzilla was about to get plasma breath, like he did to the Muto in the first movie.
I don't know what it is about these movies and the jaw wrench, but it is a theme, and it happens a lot. And every time I see it happening, it rolls my stomach. There's something about the idea of just like prying the jaw open.
Yeah,
like that.
Mechagodzilla is like opening Godzilla's mouth, about to like plasma breath him, and Kong comes flying in and manages to like face him up to the sky so he doesn't die.
It's gotta be one of the worst.
And they have the tag team of the century, by the way. They are just jumping, homie. Like, Mechagodzilla is getting jumped hard. Even though they're jumping him and they're 2v1ing, like, Mechagodzilla still kind of has the upper hand.
Well, it helps when you're not alive and can't feel pain.
Right? Until Kong manages to grab his axe, and then they start going to town again. Mechagodzilla brings out its spinning tail of death and is about to finish off Kong. And this is the part where Bernie is like, fuck, we're all fucked, we're all gonna die. And he pulls out the flask. And Josh, this is the most realistic part of the movie, gets locked out from trying the password too many times. And then he sees Bernie about to drink the like little flask of alcohol. And he's like, that's it. So he grabs the flask from Bernie and starts spilling it all over the equipment, which causes everything to malfunction.
Okay, so it wasn't coffee, but still. You know what? The only worst thing they could have put in there would have been like a Diet Coke.
Oh, yeah.
The syrup.
Well, they talk about it early in the movie, but I didn't mention it. But Bernie has like a flask that was from when his wife died. And it's like the last little bit of alcohol. And he's like, if this is ever empty, you know I've given up. And that I'm probably not long for this world. That's why he was drinking it, because he was like, we're all fucked. But they spill all of this alcohol over the giant computer that's supposed to be connected with a satellite, blah, blah, blah.
It looks like they spill it into the computer's vents.
Yeah, which makes the Mechagodzilla start to malfunction. And between Kong's axe and Godzilla's plasma breath, they managed to just, like, rip apart. Like, this is like Transformers Jazz getting ripped apart by Megatron. That's what it looks like. They just start dismantling Godzilla once and for all. After the fight, we see the aftermath of, like, people still evacuating. Maddie magically finds her father in the crowd. Andrews and Gia find Lynn, who got knocked unconscious by the explosion, which woke up Kong. And then we see Godzilla and Kong square up again, like they're about to fight. But instead, they give each other the, like, head nod, the, like, roar, and they go off in their own directions. Then it just cuts to a scene of Hollow Earth, where Monarch has set up, like, a Kong monitoring station. And he signed home to little Gia. And I checked to see if there was a post-credit screen, because we watched this on Netflix and they don't have. You can't really watch post-credit screens on Netflix. And there is no post-credit scene for any of the following movies. So only the first few had them. This one does not. That's it. I rate this one probably right below 2014. Because I like this one more than King of Monsters, because the scrapping was better choreographed. It wasn't just like ad hoc monsters shooting beams at each other. There was like I had beef with the fact that Godzilla doesn't use his plasma breath enough, because I'm like, he could just like keep the opponent at a distance and just breath them to death easily. And this is the first time where you see that, because he is like machine gunning his breath or like laser beaming all over the place trying to hit Kong. And I'm like, this is what I expected Godzilla to have to do against his opponents, instead of just boxing first and then using your plasma breath to finish them.
Maybe he just likes fighting to fight.
He could just
Maybe it's a good workout.
He'd just be about that life. He'd be ready to throw hands at all times. But I personally like this movie better than King of Monsters. And I think it's just above Kong. Because I felt like there wasn't as much of a lore dump as like Kong, Skull Island, or Godzilla, King of Monsters. So I felt like it was the perfect amount of story plus information and lots of fighting. Because I watch these movies because I want to watch giant monsters scrap. And you got a lot of that in this movie. And Mechagodzilla was handling business.
It helps when you can't feel pain.
Yeah, he was just like, Godzilla could not get a leg up. You could tell that like the Titans just don't know how to fight technology, because like Godzilla didn't expect any of the stuff that was happening at him, because the missiles were blinding him, and then the rocket punch was like making the Mechagodzilla move way faster than a giant monster should. So he was just taken off guard and just getting whooped.
Yeah.
Guys had whooped.
I'd love to see some lore about what these creatures' lifespans are, because Kong's old at this point.
They're essentially infinite. Because Godzilla apparently fought Ghidorah and Kong. Like,
right, but we don't know if that was OG Godzilla or like his great-great-granddaddy.
Fair. They don't really talk about that.
Because it's just a cave painting, really.
I'm of the assumption that they have like a damn near infinite lifespan, and that unless there's no radiation left on the planet, they're not gonna die.
Well, because they have babies. I mean, Kong had a family. The Mutos from 2014 had all those gross little eggs.
I think Kong might be a little different. I think Kong might not have as long a lifespan. Godzilla seems to doesn't age.
So I think it would be interesting to address that lore personally.
Yeah.
Because, you know...
Well, they might not have... How do you measure...
I'm just saying it would be interesting.
I just don't even know how they would go
about... Look, we cyclically connected to a skull. I feel like it could be done.
Listen, they have the technology for that. There's no way to, like... What is it? Carbon date a goddamn lizard? Like, it's still alive. How do you judge how old
Well, it
it
would
is?
just be interesting to see if
Like,
Godzilla ever had a baby.
Do we cut off its tail and see how many rings are on the inside? Like, what do you do?
Actually, there's a way to do that with your bones.
Yeah. Oh, maybe if we could,
But no, I just think it'd be interesting, like, is there a lady Godzilla out there? Is it asexual? Like the 1998 one?
I'm of the opinion that most Titans are asexual, but clearly the Mutos...
have babies.
Yeah, but I think they might be of the, like you said, the, like, only one survives. So
Mothra was an egg.
Mothra has, like, a cycle.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, we have seen that there is some sort of, like...
death and rebirth.
Yeah, of these creatures. So I just think it'd be cool to see some of that in the background.
I think some have my opinion is that some have lifespans, some don't. Some are just, once you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah. But anyways, that's just side tangent for me. I think this one is maybe second for me. Kong Skull Island's my favorite. Even though that is a little bit...
I think it's blasphemous.
I like that one. I don't care. That one's my favorite. I would say this one comes second, then 2014, then King of Monsters.
Yeah, King of Monsters was just...
And we'll see where it ends up once we watch, the next in the series.
Was it Godzilla X Kong New Empire?
Yeah, I don't know.
We gotta watch them soon. Apparently they're gonna be leaving. I know Godzilla vs. Kong is leaving Netflix on the 29th. So we might have to watch the next one quickly. I don't know if it's leaving as well.
To be honest, we canceled Netflix because they apparently have reached what I consider a reasonable threshold for pricing. So we're limited on that soon anyways.
Oh yeah, it's going to be gone.
Thank you for listening. Stick around for our MonsterVerse moment and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
On tonight's MonsterVerse moment, inspired by Dr. Eileen Andrews, we are going to be talking about the study of the great apes, which began in the mid-20th century, focusing on whether apes, such as chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, are capable of learning and using language or symbolic communication systems similar to those used by humans. So, a little bit of background. Early efforts to teach apes human-like communication primarily concentrated on sign language, specifically American Sign Language, ASL, as well as symbolic systems like lexigrams, which are symbols that represent words. This goes back all the way to like the 1960s. And if I say any of these names wrong, please forgive me. Washoe, that's how I'm going to say this, Washoe, is a chimpanzee raised by researchers Dr. Beatrix Gardner and Dr. Alan Gardner. From a young age, Washoe was taught American Sign Language and eventually learned over 350 signs. Washoe is known to have passed on some of her sign language abilities to an orphan chimpanzee named Lewis, essentially teaching him some signs, making this the first instance of a primate learning sign language from another primate rather than directly from humans. Next, we have in the 1970s a chimpanzee, love their name, Nim Chimpsky. Was a chimpanzee who was raised and taught American Sign Language as part of an experiment led by Dr. Herbert Terrence. Nim's use of language was closely observed, and although he learned various signs and combined them in ways that appeared meaningful, his communication was primarily viewed as response to immediate rewards than a true understanding of the language. Dr. Terrence himself critiqued this project and raised doubts about the validity of the claims that Nim was using language in a manner similar to humans. But who cares, because they named him Nim Chimpsky.
Right, they set him up for failure.
And that's amazing. And so then probably the most well-known case of this, like you've definitely even heard of her, is Coco the gorilla.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think everyone has.
Yeah, also started in the 1970s. Dr. Penny Patterson cared for Coco and taught her sign language. She learned over 1,000 signs and use them to express desires, emotion, and even abstract concepts in some cases. Coco was known to invent new signs to communicate novel ideas, such as combining the words finger and bracelet to mean ring. So essentially, if she didn't know the word, she might try to come up with something, which was actually, it sounds like kind of frustrating for everybody all around, because sometimes they didn't really understand what she was trying to convey. So at one point, she would place the sign for the letter S at her forehead and was inventing a sign for brows, which is a term that was used by her caregivers to refer to the greens and flowers they collected for like snacks.
Oh, okay.
So like if you didn't know what that was, which I feel like you and I actually could empathize with a lot because our children have had speech delays. PJ never really picked up baby signs, but our son did. There have been many moments where he has been desperately trying to convey something to us and we have just simply not understood. which then our general response is like, okay, I'm not getting it. Show me.
Sometimes he can't show you, so it's...
Yeah. So it's just a loop of frustration for everybody involved. But he's a human child. So when you get to that point, you're like, just show me what you are meaning. And then he'll like take you by the hand and lead you to something in the pantry. And you're like, oh, you mean spaghetti.
Well, it like makes more sense. His jumbled words make more sense when I know what he's talking about.
Right.
Because then I'm like, oh, okay, I see what he was trying to say.
But you can't exactly do that with a giant gorilla.
Oh, no, I don't want to be close enough for them to be able to lead me by the
right.
hand.
For safety reasons, for a lot of researchers, they're probably not just going to open up the enclosure and be like, okay, Coco.
Take me with what you're talking about.
But I do empathize with some of that frustration just because both of our children have inherited my little genetic quirk where they've needed some extra help with their language. So she actually had a male companion named Michael, who was a little younger than her, and he also learned sign language, but not anywhere near the rate that she did. She had over 1,000 words in her vocabulary. He had around 600-ish.
Oh, he fell so short.
Just in general, she had better vocabulary than he did.
Yeah.
All right. Another case was Kanzi the bonobo. She was part of an experiment that actually used lexicograms instead of sign language, and that's a set of symbolic representations pressed on a keyboard to convey messages. Kanzi's ability to understand spoken English and use lexicograms to form responses led researchers to reconsider the cognitive capabilities of great apes. His achievements were seen as more evidence of symbolic thinking and comprehension in non-human primates. That being said, this field of research has been met with a lot of controversy, primarily revolving around the interpretation of ape behavior, the definition of language, and the ethical implications of such research.
What was seen as unethical about teaching gorillas?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, because I was like, I feel like trying to communicate shouldn't warrant some unethical labeling.
So the first little, I guess, topic in the controversy section of this is mimicry versus creative language use. The basic point of contention is that people are concerned about whether the apes genuinely use language or merely mimic signs and symbols to receive a reward. So essentially, are they making the sign for banana knowing that gets them a banana, or do they actually know what it means?
I feel like with a little practice, you could figure out the difference. Especially if they're asking for other things, not just banana.
To me, once again, I empathize with this maybe on a more personal level because we've had two children who've had some speech concerns. And to me, whether or not they meant banana or they simply wanted a banana, if they still were able to communicate that need and you were able to respond to it, who cares?
Yeah. I could see why they would want to dig deeper and like, do they have the ability to understand that they're signing for this? Or is it just this gets me a result, therefore I'm going to do it?
Right. And so that's kind of a major topic of controversy here. For me, I would hazard a guess, like, maybe they're not signing at the level of an adult human, but maybe a 3-year-old toddler.
Yeah.
But that still is impressive.
Especially if it becomes something where if they do this generation after generation and they start to teach each other, then you might have more basis on whether or not this is working.
And there were cases, Coco and Michael could sign to each other, and Washo taught her orphan chimpanzee some signs. So there is some cases there that they do seem to understand at least some things. If not the deeper meaning behind it, they're at least able to teach each other that sign means banana, and if you make it, you'll get a banana, which I still think is impressive. So the concern is, are apes expressing ideas creatively, or are they just responding to conditioned behavior through their trainers? The next point of controversy or discussion, I guess I'm going to say instead, is that human language is characterized by complex grammar and syntax, allowing for the construction of sentences that convey meaning beyond simple requests. Mm-hmm. And although some apes, such as Washo and Coco, were able to combine signs to express new ideas, their use of language did not demonstrate the same level of complexity as human communication, which is a significant point of contention in assessing their linguistic abilities and lack of clear grammatical structures. That being said, they're still an ape, and I'm thinking that maybe they cognitively understand this at the level of a 3 or 4-year-old and not as an adult, and it's ridiculous to expect that of them.
Whoever brought up that point is skipping steps. So they're expecting them to be like, I taught them, therefore they should be able to express more than what I've taught them. And it's like, no, it would, like, that's like saying when humans first learned speech, we immediately could, speak a perfect language. No, we had to stair step it. Or like even when you teach someone a new language, that's like, if you tried to teach me like German, my German would be garbage and I wouldn't be able to express myself properly. Mm-hmm. So like you're trying to teach them a language, one, that they've never used to communicate. So it's not like I understand the structure of English, therefore there's some knowledge into learning another language. They don't have that. So they're learning from scratch.
Well, and I mean, at the end of the day, this is a creature that is fundamentally different from us.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you're asking a lot.
Right? That'd be like, you go learn how gorillas communicate and then speak to me about how to creatively think in their language.
Exactly. So I feel like that some of this is a little bit like reaching, but whatever.
People fighting just to fight instead of like being like, oh my god, we're making advancements.
We taught this gorilla how to sign for a banana, which is impressive. I'm sorry, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next concern is interpretation bias. Trainers who are emotionally attached to the apes may unintentionally project human-like qualities onto the animal's actions. For instance, Coco's expressions of grief following the death of her pet cat were perceived by some as genuine emotional responses. However, other people argued that these behaviors were merely learned reactions that Coco had been trained to exhibit from her trainers in specific contexts. I think there's some of that in any scientific research. I don't know that you ever get away from that totally.
Well, I'd say too that isn't that the goal? Like, is to like have them slowly develop the same way that we did? Because like, yes, this might be a learned reaction, but maybe they didn't have a way to express that before, and now they've learned it.
Well, and
but I do understand what they're saying.
I suppose I'm not happy with that point, period, simply because it's pretty well documented that apes do grieve when they lose a baby.
Yeah. For
instance, or sometimes a partner or a member of their troop. That's not the right term for it, but their group. They will grieve.
It's like cluster or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's actually. I know crows are murderers.
Yeah, it's like a gang.
Once again, why birds are not trustworthy. So, and then last but certainly not least, there are ethical concerns. There are people who question teaching language to non-humans, that because you isolate these apes in captivity and you subject them to intensive language training may lead to psychological and emotional harm for them. It is obviously not natural for them to be taught signs, and particularly to be raised by humans. There are concerns about the appropriateness of teaching animals something as fundamentally human as language, especially when such training could disrupt their cognitive needs and natural behaviors, which to me feels a little bit like Planet of the Apes.
I get what they're saying. Okay,
I get what they're saying, but towards the end there leans a little Planet of the Apes.
Well, I mean, I was about to say, this feels like someone who's afraid of the apes rising up, but at the same time, I get what they're saying. They might lose the ability to adapt to their normal environment by trying to adapt to ours.
Yeah.
So I get what they're saying. That could cause long-term damage if it was generational. And
then depending on how you are teaching them this language, if you're using positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcements, or how intensive you are doing it, there can be some, animal cruelty concerns in and without.
That's what I thought you were going to allude to, is that they used extreme measures to teach them sign language versus like are they using the carrot and the stick or just the carrot?
Yeah. So there's concerns that somebody who is not ethical could be using those negative methods. So those are some of the controversies and discussion points in and around teaching apes language. As I mentioned before, the two main systems used to do this, which we see in this movie, is ASL. They use, American Sign Language to teach, allowing them to communicate using hand signs. Some of those signs do have to be modified for the simple fact that their hands look different than ours. So they can't physically form some of the same hand structures that we do.
Their hands are like super extended, so their thumbs are really low, so it might be hard to like...
Yeah. And that's the method that was used with Washoe and Coco. And, as noted, Coco had over 1,000 signs. That's a significant vocabulary. So then the other method is symbolic systems. Lexicograms seem to be, what I was reading, used more commonly. You'll see these keyboard, or sometimes they do systems with dogs where there'll be buttons that they can press and they'll have like symbols on them. And the symbols relate to words and they can form messages. So Kanzi, the bonobo, used a lexigram-based system. Research were able to show that he could understand spoken English to a limited extent. Very similar to, once again, everything I'm reading shows that they seem to be around a toddler level of understanding and ability to express themselves.
Well, I think it might be a situation, too, where historically they've never needed to learn more than a handful of things. So their brain might not currently have the, wrinkles or exercise to be able to retain more than a handful of things. Not to mention, we don't understand how well they interpret things.
Yeah.
We have a very small idea from years and years of research, but I think it'll be much longer before we can, one, fully understand because we might be teaching the wrong way. They might learn better a different way. We just haven't learned the best way to communicate that. Yep. Or it might be fruitless. They might never be able to learn.
And so, essentially, why they wanted to do these studies was to deduce whether or not we could teach these primates some version of language and if they could communicate with them better. And then it allowed us to study not only their cognitive abilities, but what it means in and around to express yourself with language. And if it could be found useful in working with these creatures. Example would be in this movie where the little girl Gia is able to sign family and home to Kong to help him essentially do what they want him to do in this movie. And that is about the great ape language. I think sometimes people, not a scientist, gonna start this statement with that, not a scientist. But sometimes I think people get so focused on what they wanted the study to say or how they wanted the study to go that they lose sight of the fact that what the study did show is actually extremely impressive in and of itself. They taught a gorilla over 1,000 words. She came up with some of those words on her own. That's amazing. Even if she wasn't using it to create creative narratives, that's still fucking awesome.
No, it's very impressive.
So, pat on the back. That's still cool. That's this week's MonsterVerse moment. If you like what you heard, leave us a review. Please be kind, and we'll see you next week.